It's 5:30 Kuala Lumpur time, and you're here with me on the Sheila Exchange to speak about, to listen to me speak to a special guest, Fong Lai-Lyn, on digitization. Now, Lai-Lyn is very well versed in the field. She is a networking expert, having been for a long, long time working in the area of exhibitions and expos and trade fairs with Hanover Messe Worldwide. She is also the founder of Pathway, which is an organization that's just been set up to assist other companies in business model innovation, culture change, and a heap of other things that we need very much today. So thank you for joining us today, Lynn. Call her Lynn for short, because Lai-Lyn Fong is a bit of a mouthful. So, hi Lynn, how are you?
Hey, good. And yourself, Sheila? Thank you for having me on
Uh,
the Sheila Exchange.
Thank you for agreeing to be here.
Not a
Now, Lynn,
problem.
why I asked you to join us to speak on this topic is that digitization is a word that scares a lot of people. When they hear digitization, they think, oh, robots, automation, very expensive, mahal to implement all this into our organization, right? Cannot. Yet, in small ways, we've all had to sort of adopt some sort of digitization in this past 1 year, since we've all had to go online to work, right? So before we go any further into the topic itself, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into this whole digital milieu. It seems like a very formidable subject field for a young lady like yourself to get into.
Well, thank you, Sheila. Okay. I actually come from a background quite diverse. I graduated with a languages and linguistics degree from University Malaya. I majored in English. Later, I pursued an innovation management master's degree with St. Charles and Martin's College of Art and Design. Hence, maybe the interest in why digitalization or digitization always played a role. And then after that, of course, being involved in the trade fair industry, the latest technologies you find from the biggest robotic arm that can carry a car from one location to another to even the smallest that can then be converted into 3D printing or laser printing for that matter has definitely sparked an inner child in me, as you may have it. I would call myself 100% the nerd, but even then, you and I are already in some way or another experiencing digitization. So when we look at our everyday lives nowadays, we would think, okay, this is like normal to a millennial. But you and I, we grew up in an era where computers were never something that was a norm, right?
Mm,
And then when if you remember the screens, which was black and green, where everything was written in green, that was the beginnings of digitization, where you see the typewriter. That was something that was used to replacing your handwriting, right? And then from handwriting, it went to typesetting. Typesetting went into computers. And now you have printers that you can even disconnect from the Wi-Fi, use Bluetooth to print, and all these are actually forms of digitization, making it your life easier in this case.
So that's really interesting, because actually we are already practicing it,
Yep.
and we really shouldn't be afraid of the word digitization, right? I mean, something that occurred to me and tickled me is you saying that digitization brought out the inner child in you. I'm thinking like, wow, that must be some inner child, because the inner child in me is brought out by just going out and playing around with paint and acrylic paint on canvas and stuff like that. So you must have been one heck of a child.
Well, to say the least, I was also someone who was very hands-on. Like, I would always thrive doing art. I would always thrive doing something DIY-ish. So you give me a chart and you give me a piece of furniture that is dismantled from IKEA, I'll probably be able to build it for you with no questions asked. It's like when my dad brought me one whole thing and I'll be like just thinking away, and then he'd be like, "Are you done?" He say, "Yes, I am totally done. My whole room is done because you didn't even have to worry about it." Yeah. It's the same even when I'm looking at computers. As much as I don't assemble them, but I know what needs to be done in order for you to ensure that life actually continues on instead of stalling yourself. Yeah, I get that, when you're in a situation of having to face between whether you want to be digitalized or digitized, whether a
Mm-hmm.
robot versus a handphone is going to dictate life. Not necessarily. It's entirely up to the human being, in my opinion, that tells you that you need to be able to decipher what life is for yourself. So if you look at the what you call it, the picture behind me, if you can see the
Mm,
drone, okay, so the
mm,
drone in technical sense is actually a part of digitalization. And
okay.
digitalization here means that you're able to take pictures or take aerial views, which usually was in this part using a helicopter, and then a videographer with a whole heavy set cinematographer thing to film from the aerial view. But now with
Okay,
a drone,
hang on a
yes,
minute, Lynn. Now,
yeah,
people listening out there would go like, she was talking about digitization. Now she went into digitalization. Okay, I'm a bit confused here. And that's something that a lot of people get confused about,
yes,
right?
yes.
You hear these words a lot, digitization, digitalization. Same, different. So, what could you sort of clarify by definition what each one means, like with an example for
Sure, no problem. If
everybody?
you allow me to share my screen.
Sure, sure. I've already made you a co-host.
So if you see here,
Okay.
okay. So let me know if you can't see my screen.
I can see your screen, yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so digitalization. What is it and why, right? So I'm coming from the point of view from Pathway, but even when I'm working as a sales director of Mesa Worldwide, the word digitalization is a very common used word in our exhibitions. Okay, so I've kind of streamlined the presentation anyways, and hitting straight to the bullet, what exactly defines digitalization, okay? And it actually means digital technologies to change a business model and provide new revenue and value producing opportunities. Process of moving to a digital business. This is a
Okay.
definition by Gartner.
Mm.
What does this mean actually? Okay.
In
Now,
English.
in English, yes, what does
Yeah.
this mean? It's actually changing the way you do business. Like, let's say when you are a hawker seller, you always traditionally
Yeah.
deal in cash. But
Mm.
now, when you go out there and actually tap out from your hawker seller by I want one nasi lemak, and then it's okay. Now you scan what do you call it, Google Pay, you send Grab Pay, you scan Touch and Go e-wallet. All these are digitalized tools for you to already then say I pay electronically. This electronics bit of paying instead of using cash is actually already a new way of earning money, going back to digital technologies so that it erases what is traditionally known as hand to hand. Okay, using very physical, changing into a digital location. So you don't necessarily have to exchange cash anymore, but you're actually transferring money digitally.
So a cashless way of payment is a
Mm,
digitalization.
yes, cashless way of payment.
So
But
how would digitization fit into this scenario?
that's where this one comes in. It's the process of changing from analog to digital form. In the using this as an analogy, going into payment again, the process of changing it from analog to digital means that you're choosing to adopt technology to change the way you do business.
Okay.
You can still choose not to, and that is still remaining analog. But by the minute you go into a digital form, it can be any form wherever. You can even be a debit card. It can be your traditional form of bank transfer, but now everything's on the phone. All these are digital forms of the process of changing from an analog system to a digital system. Going back even further, okay, your phone and your normal dial phone. Okay, Your mobile phone is now like what you call a walking dictionary. You can do
Yeah.
everything and anything with it. But before that, you always only had the dial phone where you press numbers and then you just call. Now that's a very analog bit, right? That's still very traditional. You don't go very far from it. But the minute you have a phone, oh my God, it's like you open up a can of worms. And unless you know how to navigate that digital form, then you would know whether or not this is useful to you. That's changing analog to digital.
Okay. Right. So, okay. Okay, let's look at this example that you have given us, the
Yes.
typewriter and the laptop.
Mhm.
So digitization is using the laptop instead of a typewriter.
Yeah.
And in that context, digitalization would be
Computer.
the computer. So again, Lynn, I'm not getting that very clear picture now for the audience about the difference between digitization and digitalization. Is digitization moving from analog to the digital
Yep.
way of doing something? And digitalization is the products that you produce from that process.
Yes.
I see.
Mm.
Okay.
It's like, okay, when you have a phone, your first mode, Nokia, that is a form of digitization. You're analoging your normal cord phone that you would have on a side table into something that's
Okay.
mobile, but it was big and chunky then, right?
Okay.
And then the minute it migrates from a Nokia bit phone, then it goes onto a smartphone. That's digitalization because you're making life even easier.
Ah, okay.
Mm.
So in a way, I'm seeing it as a bit like the hardware and the software like that, lah,
Yep.
right? So
Mm.
digitization is moving your hardware into something that's sort of more automated, more technical and all that.
Yes. Yes.
Digitalization is the process of improving that or the products and the output that you get from doing that. So
Yes.
today we have digitized from the handset at home into the mobile phone. And we have digitalized in terms of taking photos, videos,
Yep.
emails, and everything and on the phone. Okay, so I think now people have got like a really clear differentiation when you use something that's so simple and basic as the handphone. Okay, let's have a bit more fun like this, you know. So I'm trying to understand this better also, right? Okay, so let's look at digitization and digitalization of music, for example.
Yeah.
Last time you had the old record player, and then sort of very analog, right?
Yes.
Then of course they went into CDs and all that, where you had to like really put your hand inside and take the thing and press it out. Then after a while, you didn't even need that, right? Everything sort of became digitalized, so you could watch movies on your computer and stuff like that, and then you could go to Spotify and listen to. That's digitalization.
Yeah.
Okay, this looks like fun. How can you digitalize something in the kitchen?
You
Interesting.
can
Tell
from
me.
in the kitchen. Now let me see. Your stove.
Mm.
You use normal gas,
Okay.
right? And then from gas, it's gone to electric,
Mm.
right? And then induction.
Mm.
Okay.
That's
Now,
digitization lah.
yes, this digitization. Digitalization is employing a robotic arm to actually cook for you or make your coffee. Now that's digitalization, taking the human out of the equation and replacing it with a human with a robotic arm.
Okay, where can I get this robotic house helper? Because my maid's planning to go back soon in a few couple of months. And I'm sitting down here horrified at the thought, like, oh, I have to do all the housework, the cooking. Where can I get one of these kitchen robots to cook in?
Still you could say a testing phase for many because for a lot of households they might find it really weird to have a robotic arm. But
I
mind
wouldn't.
for you probably not. My cousin has also told me if you can find me a robot that can help me with my housework, my cleaning, my mopping, my this, my that, I would be eternally grateful to you. There are, of course, research. I do not know how extensive this is, but it has been rolled out in certain industries. For instance, in the F&B industry, there are a few restaurants, one in Sabah, apparently, and then another one up in the US, where they have employed robotic arms to do the cooking. Everything is automated. It is fixed onto a system where it knows what ingredients it needs to use, what temperature it needs to be, how quick it needs to cook, and then it pours out and it serves. So this is something that is already taking place in a very commercial setting up in the US and one here in Sabah where they already have, I think, three robotic arms, if I'm not mistaken. All this you can find on YouTube. You just have to Google robotic cooking in kitchen and it will come out. Even in the exhibitions that I do, for instance, in the Hannover Messe, and even in Singapore, there is a company that has employed a robotic arm, and you can literally tell that robotic arm, like let's say Sheila, hey
Mm.
Sheila, yes, please make me a cappuccino. The arm will go to the coffee machine and actually literally do what needs done and then serve you a cappuccino at the end of the day.
In case my children are listening, not going to happen here. This ain't no robot. Okay. So Lynn, what I wanted to ask you then is that if this is already happening, okay, so again, you remember that old cartoon, The Jetsons, it looks like they really were anticipating come the future, 20, 30 years time, that might be happening, right?
Yes.
So since digitization has already been happening in our lives and digitalization, how come so many people are scared of it? And why do so many people consider it to be such an expensive process? Do you think it's because of a lack of understanding of what it is?
There are many factors. One is the words sound very big. No, so digitalization.
That's
Wow,
right.
like in the common man's brain, they were like, I'm going to retreat into my little world and I'm not going to come out. But little do they know is that a lot of the processes that they already have, whether office or not, is already part of digitization. Digitalization is taking what something that was menial in terms of tasks, putting it into a more digitalized manner and making sure that it just functions on its own without you even having to worry, right? Now, when I come in and I say, hey, that you don't have to be afraid because it doesn't mean that you have to buy automated system from Siemens to make your factory work. You don't have to necessarily subscribe to Microsoft, what do you call it, Surface computers just to make sure that you have something that you can take around to produce, or necessarily buy an Apple phone just because you need to be ahead of the game. You don't need to. There's always something that is more cost effective for someone who may not have that budget in order for you to achieve digitalization and digitization, no matter where you go. Why else do you think there's Oppo, there's Huawei, there's Mi, Xiaomi being the next biggest after Apple kind of thing. And then you have Samsung. All these different phone brands have their own price ranges. You can either choose to pay the middle range, the really cheap range, or the most expensive range. If you have the cash and buy an Apple, an iPhone, why not? 7,000 ringgit. But if you don't have it, there's always an alternative version that is equally as good, making it available to you, and you're able to digitize your life slightly easier. So when I say that it's not exactly a scary word, it's because people always equate it as it needs to be the latest. It doesn't necessarily mean so. Yeah.
It
Here
doesn't have to
in
be the latest, most
no.
expensive. You always have alternatives which are more cost effective or for
Yes.
personal use or for business use.
Yes. Even here in Malaysia, there's always this misconception that you have to buy a German software or a German machinery, okay, because it's top notch. Yes, I agree. It comes with the best technology, it's the most well efficient, it lasts you a long time, and it gives you that Apple edge because you're using the word German technology. I am for a German trade fair. I work for German trade fairs. I get that whole analogy, but I come from that the perspective that it doesn't necessarily have to be just German in itself. I champion local Malaysian businesses by bringing them overseas to be on these platforms so that they can then showcase their avenues. Okay. I just had a conversation today with a homegrown Malaysian company whose software is equivalent to that of Siemens, but at a fraction of a price. Okay. And he is able to save any of the companies that he has serviced, okay, money refeeding it back into its system, making it money as well, okay, and save energy. How many people can actually lay claim on that? Not many, right? And it is, if it is a homegrown Malaysian company, there's always an alternative to it. So why do you need to resort to Siemens when there's also something that's a little bit cheaper, but it doesn't mean inferior either? Yeah.
I think that's a really good way of putting it, and I think it's a good eye opener for people who are listening, because sometimes in our heads we feel that if something is very expensive, costs more, then it is better, right?
Mm.
But then again, there are lots of good things to. I hear someone saying that they agree in the background. So and the point of the matter is that we have a lot of Malaysian made in Malaysian things,
Mm.
which are as good, if not better,
Oh yeah.
than what everyone propagates out there. And I think it's time for us to start looking at these cheaper alternatives. I mean, it's like this lah. You want to do, you got options range right from the cheapest to the most expensive. Then if you want to do, then start with a cost effective option and go into it. But if you want to sit there and yearn for the moon, say, oh, I want the best but I can't afford it, then you are going to be left behind, right?
Yes.
Because you're
Yes.
not going to digitize it all. Which brings me to the next question, Lynn. Why
Mhm.
do companies, especially now, I mean, we've gone through a pandemic, and I tell you, there's nothing like a pandemic to really accelerate whatever you need to be done in terms of digitization, automation, and all that sort of thing. So many companies have been talking about it for years and years. Oh, we need to do this, we need to get into industrial transformation 4.0 and digitize and all that. But then oh, but it costs a lot of money, we have to think this through. And then came a pandemic. Within 3 months, 6 months, people were just like pivoting and doing it.
Yes.
Like needs must, I gotta do it, I gotta do it. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, sometimes I think that we just need to go and do it. And last week I was talking to an entrepreneur on Suthan Murkaya on this platform, and I said, so what do, if you want to start business, then how? I think it through and all that. He said, no, just start somewhere and get it done. So again, right now, why is it imperative at this time in our history, at this time in business, at the global level, for companies to start embracing digitization?
The number one question to ask yourself is, can you do business traditionally now?
Mm,
If you cannot, then what do you do? Do you sit there and wait for the cows to come home, or do you go and do something? Like what your previous guest said, just start somewhere and get it done, right? Otherwise, how are you going to survive? There's no way for you to try and pick up the phone because none of us are actually in the office. I have clients who literally said, hello, why are you not answering the phone? Thankfully, I have your mobile number. I say, because office closed, ma. If office closed
mm,
means I work from home. But
mm,
unfortunately, I cannot redirect my office phone to my mobile phone. So what
uh,
do I do? So long as you can get me on a mobile phone, which means that it's already a form of digitalization, right?
mm,
From that to this.
mm.
Now, what are we doing? We're talking over the internet. We are using conference tools that otherwise would have been something that was not the
We would
convenient
never have
use.
thought of it before. Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
Well, for us, from the German perspective, we've always been virtually meeting because we're around the world. We have 68 to 70 representatives that need to be clued in on what is happening in Germany. So what do? We employ this tools online in various forms, whether it's Zoom, Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, you name it, we have it. We do it because we need to stay in touch, no matter the time zone. And if we don't do this, your normal traditional face to face will never happen because of
Mm,
all the standard operating procedures that we have now. Now, Frank coined up this morning random operating procedure because every other time there's something random that happens in our lives here that we
mm,
have to be on top of the game. So being random also has to be part and parcel of our lives. How? Because we need to fit it into what we're trying to do in order to survive and see the next day forward, right?
mm,
So for a lot of companies who say, hey, what do we do now? Can we move forward? Of course you can. It's a matter of wanting to adopt and whether you are afraid to adopt. Why
mm,
being afraid? I think at the end of the day, for a lot of companies, a lot of people is the sheer fear of not knowing what to do. They don't want to be seen as if they're like, I don't know how to embrace this. But then they're afraid also to ask, how do I do it? Okay. The,
Mm.
once you overcome it, you'll be able then to see what kind of benefits digitalization can actually bring to your company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hearing what you're saying, Lynn, and it's very interesting because I'm relating it back the whole of last year back to my own experience. When it comes to education and training, traditionally for the longest time, we, especially in Malaysia, we have been doing it face to face, classroom style, and all that. And the year before the pandemic hit, I signed up for training, okay, a postgraduate diploma, and I had to do it virtually lah because it was US based,
Mhm.
and of course I couldn't go there. And then we had all these classmates from all over the world, and we had massive assignments to do every week. Assignment. I'm like, damn it! So we had to get So we had to get online and have all our con calls and discussions and do the assignments together. And people from Tokyo and all and Riyadh and Paris, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Okay, when I embarked on it, it was frightening. It's like I can't do this, but then I did it. And so when the pandemic came again, and we all had to pivot onto the virtual mode, and it's very interesting. Like there were many trainers who saw the writing in the wall, said, "Okay, we better learn how to do this." But then they were ready. But the companies were like, "Oh, we don't know how to do this, or people don't know how to learn online and all that." Then they started trying little bits, like 1 hour here, 2 hours there. And then today I have clients telling me, "No, we put them for 1 hour, 1 day training." I'm like, 1 day can tahan, they're all online for training. And they're like, no, 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 we just have to do it. They'll just have to have the appetite for it. And I'm like, I'm doing that now. So, it's like when you have to, you do.
Mhm.
Okay. And
Mhm.
and for my own experience, and I'm sure many people out there who've had to embrace this digitization, when they stood on that threshold of that cliff, right? This yawning sort of divide between where we were before and where we had to go. While standing there, like I don't know how to fly. I don't know how to fly. But then when you jump, you just naturally learn to fly. And I think
Yep.
that you have to start somewhere. And if you don't
Yes.
know how, you learn.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
yeah, you learn. If you are if it's something you need to learn, you can learn online. Learn. If not, if you need to get people to come on board, train you, consultants and all that, get them on board at least to begin the discussion of what we need to do and where we need to go from here. So
Mhm.
coming to that, is it necessary for everybody, every business to hop onto that bandwagon now? Don't how?
It depends. I think the one step at a time. There was a study that was done by Twilio that kind of assessed the number of SMEs around the world, and it said that it pushed up to 62% of SMEs were saying that it accelerated the adoption of digitalization. Okay, that says a
This
lot.
is worldwide. This is
Just
worldwide.
worldwide, yeah. So
Okay.
when you look at it, it kind of goes like, whoa, 62%, that is quite a large number of SMEs that needs to go and digitalize. But there are certain processes that you can still remain as face-to-face or even keeping it as what you've been doing right now. A lot of people have computers, that's a mainstay. Okay. A lot of people have desk phones, a lot of people have a mobile phone. They don't necessarily have to have three mobile phones in order to do business, right? So to me, it is a matter of necessity in terms of what is important first. If your business needs to address the most important issue in it, for instance, I need to keep in contact with my customers, but I cannot be in the office. So what do? You subscribe to a service that allows you to be able to talk to your customers even when you're not in the office. Okay. That is client servicing on its own. And client servicing as a digital platform has grown leaps and bounds. How else do you think websites have developed from there? Websites now include chatbots. Chatbots include someone behind the counter saying, "Hey, how can I help you?" without actually showcasing that there is digitalized a person behind it. It could be automated. It could not be automated. It can be both ways. When you look at it, it's a matter of prioritizing what you need done in your office so that you can move ahead in times. You don't need to necessarily take the biggest chunk and try and
mm,
do that, because that might eat into your cost. That might not bring you the returns that you're looking for because you're trying to do too much at one time. Define what's important in your business and then go from there. Do baby steps. Once you see the growth of one option of your company that is really digitized and you can see it growing and digitalizing it further, then you go on to the next steps. This is
mm,
where it's a step program where you actually have to really map it out in your own way in
mm.
your planning, what do you call it, department. Upper
Sometimes it,
management, yeah, upper management and even the lower management has to
what
come
if they
together
don't
to
know
see.
where to start, Lynn?
If they don't know where to start, then there's always ways for you to find out where are you out at in that game. Now there are agencies out there like the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation. They champion digitization and digitalization in all forms and fancies. They even give out grants for you to get onto that bandwagon. They've appointed a few service providers that you can already subscribe to get that money, so long as you've been in business in the last year or two, get
Mm,
that money for free. You just need to ensure that you apply for it, get that grant. That grant then helps you to get onto the digitalization bandwagon, whether it's e-commerce, whether it is to create videos of your companies, whether it is to even set up a website, whether to familiarize yourself with social media marketing. All these are forms of which digitalization is coming into play.
mm.
No longer are we looking at an analog newspaper. We are now looking at, yeah,
Digitalization.
digital advertising or online
Mm.
e-magazines, for that matter.
News and so on.
Yeah.
Now, Lynn, you mentioned earlier about SMEs, the need for them, worldwide, the need for them to digitalize. If you want to compare the Malaysian scenario, our SMEs in Malaysia, where are they in terms of digitization?
We're nowhere close to what we're supposed to be doing. There was a research done by a big multinational consultancy. I can't remember the name, but um, it clearly mentioned that out of the many businesses here in Malaysia, 900, close to 900,000 businesses are micro SMEs. Okay. And in
Yeah.
the last year, just maybe yesterday, there was a news article that came out in the Star that said that more than two-thirds of micro SMEs who were unable to digitalize themselves have now gone bust.
Oh
Okay.
my goodness, that's terrible.
Yeah, that is a whole load of companies. Whether they were registered or not registered, it's entirely up to you to think about it. But if you're unable to move past that barrier, you say, no, 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 I'm just going to wait for things to happen. Uh, Nowadays, you can't. You have to take that one leap forward, however big or small that leap is, in order to ensure that your business survives. You can't just entirely depend on word of mouth nowadays. A lot of the times when you see even homemakers who become home bakers are getting on the digital bandwagon. They join Facebook, they have their own Facebook page, they go and subscribe to groups that are pure baking goods based. I'm selling this, I'm selling that, pick up here, pick up there, this is my price point, call me, arrange pickup and stuff like that. That is in itself moving yourself away from the traditional way you sell your
Yes.
wares. Yes.
Mm,
So that has already taken place. But if two-thirds of the SMEs in Malaysia, okay, are already calling it quits by any ways and means, if because digitalization did not happen for them, they waited too long to take steps to make sure that they can survive, then what does that tell you? It means
mm,
that in our retrospect, we need to be able to move forward and say, hey, don't be shy about it. If I need to know about digitalization, I need to know about it. Okay, whether you don't speak the lingo, I don't speak the lingo. I speak the lingo now because I've undergone a number of research. I've gone and done enough reading, and I've referred to a lot of books in order to ensure that I know what I'm talking about, right? But for the layman, pakcik makcik who sells nasi lemak, if they don't understand the concept behind it, then they will probably say, I will just stick to how I sell my nasi lemak at the end of the
mm.
day, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting you're saying that because I remember during the MCO last year, there was this whole issue of vegetable farmers in Cameron Highlands not knowing how to, deliver and sell. And there was tons of vegetables going there, getting rotten, all that, until someone decided to create an app for them,
Mhm.
where, you could just order direct from them.
Lazada,
And
yes.
yeah, and so totally sort of change and evolve the way they do business. And today they don't need the middleman, so they're actually making higher profits. So
Mhm.
a situation like this, in a challenging situation like the pandemic, actually worked better for some of them because they were willing to listen and take that that step of listening to someone who knows about it. So I think the important thing at this time, even as and I'm very glad you mentioned micro SMEs, like micro entrepreneurs, like the one woman, woman show who's doing things at home. That at any level, whether you're at the smallest single operator to the largest, multinational, you need to be looking at digitizing in the areas that are going to give you the fastest and most immediate returns so that you
Yes.
can keep on doing business.
Mhm.
Okay, for the
Mhm.
let's start with keep on doing business, and then once you stabilize, then you can go on to digitalizing, in new ways to maybe increase your business. So do you have examples of small businesses, micro businesses that have actually digitized and seen some success at this time?
Examples.
Businesses, maybe sectors.
Okay, I can use the personal protection equipment, or rather occupational safety and health. Now, the traditions of occupational safety and health is that you need to go in and assess, what do you call it, the factory, you need to do a walkthrough and stuff like that, right? Now, there is a very innovative company called Industrial Nerds. Okay, they have a lot of products, I must say, that they have personally curated in order to ensure that their buyers, whoever they may be, are meeting the standard operating procedures of what KKM has now put them set in accordance to COVID-19, what do you call it? Yeah, combating against COVID-19. Their website is equally as informative. What they try to do is to tell you that while using a mask is good, it doesn't mean that just using any ordinary mask. They do a lot of comparisons in order for people to then move forward to see, okay, maybe this is something that I want over this. They have now since become more and more active on social media. Okay, they employ a lot of digitalization tools, one of which is called Hootsuite. What Hootsuite does is like literally to put together their social media postings on wherever they may be, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or any other if they have, and they time it in such a way that their postings can go out automatically without a physical person having to go like, okay, now I'm going to design this, going to put this here, da, 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 and then launch it. They do this ahead of time. So it saves them time in order for them to move ahead with whatever else they need to do, like sales. So they have one guy who goes out and says, "Hey, we need to meet up. We need to get you kitted out from air sanitization to even the guy who carries the sanitary bag and then he sprays all this disinfectant kind of thing. So all this goes into the repertoire of a small business. They are only about a year and a half maybe in this sense, going on two, where they then say, hey, we need to be able to embrace digitalization in order to stay ahead of the game. We what do you call it, they're always on the lookout for innovative products that actually address the situations at hand. And even for food safety, for instance, amongst their biggest clients that I know, they're all very happy with them. They're able to provide the kind of services that otherwise some of the smaller ones who are very traditional in selling over the counter, who could have easily the same kind of products but can never get to the client because they're a shop front, right? So
Right.
I came across another business that has yet to take that step into going into digitalization. It's a hardware shop, okay? where they sell the hammers, the nails, the piping, and all of that. For anyone who's interested in DIY, you go to the shops like these. But because of MCO, CMCO, all of this, what they call it, restrictions
All the
in place.
CEOs.
Yes, all the CEOs. I think I've lost a count already.
Yeah, me too.
They were unable to reach their clientele as much as some of them were already online, who were able to transact payments online. And what happens is they start to close, they shutter because they're unable to move forward because they say, oh
Forward.
no, I'm an essential, what do you call it, store. People will still come and buy, but that doesn't necessarily so. Why? Because people are afraid to step out of the door.
Yeah,
We're no
yeah.
longer shopping like we used to shop, where everywhere and anywhere you go to is easily available. You are not afraid that you might get COVID-19 if you stand next to a person. Now you're
Yeah.
everybody is like a bit of a paranoid. They say, "Hey, you better stand 1 meter away from me." So imagine that if you're going into a hardware store where the aisles are literally what, zero point 0.5 meters.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, Linda. I mean, just I had to go to the market, choose my tomatoes, prod the fish to see if it's fresh and all that. Go and try on, clothes and things. And over this past 1 year, I was just like, you know what? Because of course I had the COVID police staying with me at home. Like my children, no, you're not going
Yes.
out to the shop. You not go there and bring stuff back and all that. Bring little bugs back and all that. So you just learn to get online, and now I just find myself scrolling to Lazada for things that I need. Lazada is selling everything. I even managed to buy a bag of cement. You want to know why I'm buying cement? I'll tell you in another story. But decided to buy that, and they delivered it to the house. So everyone's getting used now to
Yep.
e-commerce, right?
Mhm.
Do you think we're ever going to go back? Like what happens when everyone's been vaccinated and okay, the world is safe for us to go out again? Do you think we're going to go out and shop in like we used to, or you think this whole trend of e-commerce is just still going to be very strong, or is there going to be like a hybrid, a balance? How do you think the world's going to be?
I will say a hybrid. Using my industry as an example. So the exhibitions industry is heavily dependent on face to face. No matter what you say, it has to be face to face. And there's a lot of companies are resistant to join a virtual trade fair because they say it's not the same. I don't get to touch, I don't get to feel, I don't get to see a product, I don't get to see a multi-million-dollar machine moving. I don't get to fly. Isn't an encompassing experience, if you want to say the least, right? But then, of course, you need to change. So, using my industry as an example, we have incorporated a hybrid system in which certain parts of what we do is physical and the other part is digital. But it doesn't mean that things are just going to carry on purely digital, because at some point in time, I think human beings go crazy if we don't even have human interaction,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, you and I are now talking online, but it's not the same as in person.
Yeah, waiting when we can go and makan together and chit chat, huh? Or have face-to-face
Exactly,
meetings.
exactly. These kind of things we miss. I'm an avid fan of eating anywhere and everywhere to try and to test and to see what's available out there and at least maybe recommend. And for others too, they would say, "Oh my God, I really miss having like now Chinese New Year. Oh no, I can't go and see my family. I can't do Hisang. Friends of mine who live in the UK can't fly back because they are unable to get a flight because borders are closed. All of this are going to change. But a hybrid is something that has taken place in some form of another, especially in the retail industry. There's
Mm,
a clothing brand in China. Okay. When you enter its shop, it has only one size of each, what do you call it, type of
outfit.
clothing. Yeah. So it could be a t-shirt, it could be a pair of shoes, but it only has one size of each. So size 37 to size 42, for instance. You try it on there, but they say, okay, it is available online. Would you like us to order it now, or would you like to go back to the comfort of your home to order? That is a hybrid concept in which you can go in and you can try the clothes because you want to see whether it fits you. Okay. Then you have the joy of not having to lug all these bags with you. You can order it online, pay online, and it will be delivered to you. So that is a form of hybrid in itself already in the retail industry. This goes back to when the big lockdown in the US happened. How many shops shuttered? Okay, Bloomingdale's to let me see, Uniqlo, the US, or to any of these other big brands that have multiple stores around the world. How many of them were able to keep the doors open versus how many of them did business online? Using Zara as an example, they had many stores around the world, but because of the lockdown, their online sales became 98% of their total revenue. Right, 98%. That's a huge leap from when it was back then. So
Yeah,
they have decided I'm going to concentrate on only opening stores in major cities, close down the smaller ones, make them look like it is a showroom instead. And a lot of them are doing it now. So when you go into Zara today in Wanatama, for instance, certain racks are mainly saying this is the latest arrival. We have copies of it. You can try it out. But if you need something, ask our sales assistant, which means then they're encouraging you to buy things online rather than picking it off the shelf that other people might have already touched, right? So
yeah,
that's already changing the way you're doing business.
yeah, it's very interesting to see how this world is going to be evolving,
Mhm.
you know, and experiencing it. It is really exciting times that we live in now, where every change has been accelerated. It's kind of, in a way, been taken out of our hands, whether we want to or not. We have to
Yes.
laugh. We got no choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in many ways, many things are good. Some things might not be so exciting, like we cannot go out and makan in the shops and all that now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have to do virtual reunion dinner. Like seriously, but in the long run, I guess that things will become more convenient and so on. But I guess from what we have discussed today is that digitization, it's not an option anymore. It's a must if you want to um, be have that edge in your industry. If you want to play, on an even playing field, that we really need to jump on board. And what you're saying, Lynn, is if you don't know how to do it, there are consultants, there are agencies out there that you can
Mm-hmm.
go. No company is too small to be considered to be assisted.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, if all fails, you can just contact Lai-Lyn Fong, right?
Yes.
And she will come on board and give you the advice on how to digitize, where to digitize, who to come and digitize with. All that available is information's available to her. She can be contacted on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can just message her if you just need any advice, you need to ask any questions. Lynn's always willing to, have that answer for you. Thank you so much, Lynn, for
You're
joining
most
us today
welcome,
and
Sheila. Thank you for
giving
having me.
us my pleasure. And it's like given me a great insight on digitization. And I hope that it's helped our audience out there, that many of them are, entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs that at least start with at least just taking your business online. And on that note, I haven't forgotten, please source for me a kitchen robot who can also vacuum, clean, mop, change the sheets, wash the clothes, iron them. Basically, I need a robot house helper to replace the one that's going. Thank
I will
you,
try
Lynn.
my very best. If I can't find one just yet, I will invent one for you. Let's see
Oh
what
yeah,
happens.
please do. Please use all your resources and all your connections to get your manufacturers, your robotics manufacturers. I think the time will come when we
Oh,
will have
yes.
to do that. Mm.
Yes, definitely.
So don't laugh, everyone, because in another 5, 10 years we will be having robot house helps.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for joining us. You have been listening to Sheila Singham on the Sheila Exchange, speaking to Lai-Lyn Fong, who is a digitization specialist. And any further information, contact her. Thank you for joining us. And we will not be having a segment next week. It's Chinese New Year. Let's everybody take a break. Enjoy the new year. Gong Si Fa Chai. And really, I mean this to everybody. Have a prosperous new year.